How cannons changed warfare, the weapon that ended the medieval world. For most of human history, warfare was shaped by muscle, courage, and cold steel. Spears, shields, bows, and cavalry determined the fate of armies and empires. Fortified walls stood as symbols of power, designed to resist everything an enemy could throw at them. Castles dominated landscapes. Cities believed themselves secure behind stone. Then came cannons. Few inventions have altered the course of warfare as profoundly as gunpowder artillery. Cannons did more than introduce a new weapon. They shattered an entire military system that had existed for thousands of years. They ended the age of knights and castles, transformed empires, and reshaped global power forever. The story of cannons is the story of how technology changed war and with it, history itself. Gunpowder was not invented for war. Its origins lie in ancient China, where alchemists searching for immortality accidentally created a volatile mixture of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. By the 9th century, Chinese texts described explosive powders used in fireworks, signaling devices, and simple weapons. Over time, these experiments evolved into military applications. Fire lances, bombs, and primitive rockets appeared on Chinese battlefields. Eventually, metal tubes were developed to channel explosions in a controlled direction, early ancestors of cannons. As trade routes expanded, knowledge of gunpowder spread westward through Central Asia and the Islamic world, reaching Europe by the late Middle Ages. At first, cannons were crude and unreliable. Early European cannons of the 13th and 14th centuries were little more than iron or bronze tubes mounted on wooden frames. They fired stone or metal balls using low-quality gunpowder. They were inaccurate, slow to reload, and dangerous even to their own crews. But they had one terrifying advantage. They could smash stone. For centuries, siege warfare followed predictable patterns. Attackers used ladders, siege towers, battering rams, and trebuchets. Defenders relied on thick walls, moats, and elevation. Castles and walled cities were designed to withstand years of attack. Cannons changed this balance almost overnight. A solid cannonball traveling at high speed could crack masonry that no catapult could penetrate. Repeated bombardment weakened walls, created breaches, and spread fear among defenders. Stone walls that once symbolized security now became liabilities. By the 5th–10th century, cannon technology improved dramatically. Metallurgy advanced. Gunpowder became more refined. Cannons grew larger, more powerful, and more reliable. The impact was revolutionary. One of the most famous demonstrations of cannon power occurred in 1453 during the fall of Constantinople. For over 1,000 years, the city had resisted every siege. Its Theodosian walls were considered the strongest defensive system in the world. Previous attackers had failed time and again, but Sultan Mehmed II brought cannons. Massive bombard guns shattered walls that had stood since Roman times. Within weeks, breaches appeared. On May 29, 1453, Constantinople fell, ending the Byzantine Empire and signaling the end of the medieval era. Cannons had done what centuries of armies could not. Across Europe, rulers took notice. Castles that once guaranteed safety were suddenly obsolete. Traditional feudal defenses no longer worked. Knights in heavy armor found themselves vulnerable, not just on the battlefield, but behind walls meant to protect them. Warfare was no longer about bravery alone. It was about firepower. As cannons spread, they forced a complete redesign of military architecture. Medieval castles with tall, thin walls were replaced by star-forts low, thick, angled bastions designed to absorb cannon fire and return it. These fortresses dominated Europe from the 16th to the 18th centuries, shaping wars from Italy to the Netherlands. Cannons also changed armies. Medieval warfare relied heavily on knights, elite warriors trained from childhood, supported by feudal obligations. Cannons undermined this system. A single well-placed shot could kill a nobleman just as easily as a peasant. Power shifted from feudal lords to centralized states. Cannons were expensive to build, transport, and maintain. Only strong governments with organized taxation and industry could afford them. This accelerated the rise of powerful monarchies and professional armies. War became a matter of logistics, industry, and state power. On the battlefield, cannons transformed tactics. Infantry formations had to adapt. Tight ranks became deadly targets. Armies learned to maneuver, spread out, and coordinate with artillery. Cavalry charges, once decisive, became increasingly risky when facing cannon fire. Artillery preparation before battle became standard practice. Cannons softened enemy positions before infantry advanced. This concept would dominate warfare for centuries. Cannons also expanded the scale of war. Cities could no longer hold out indefinitely. Campaigns became faster and more decisive. Territorial conquest accelerated. Empires expanded at unprecedented rates. Nowhere was this more evident than at sea. Naval warfare was completely transformed by cannons. Before gunpowder, naval battles resembled land combat as sea ships grappled, and soldiers fought hand-to-hand. Cannons turned ships into floating fortresses. The development of broadside cannons allowed ships to fire devastating volleys. Control of the seas now depended on firepower, not just seamanship. This change fueled the rise of global empires. European powers armed their fleets with cannons, dominating trade routes, colonizing distant lands, and projecting power across oceans. Cannons enabled empire on a global scale. The age of exploration and the age of empire were inseparable from artillery. Cannons also reshaped warfare beyond Europe. In the Islamic world, Ottoman cannons crushed Byzantine, Mamluk, and Safavid armies. In India, the Mughal Empire used artillery to dominate the subcontinent. In East Asia, gunpowder weapons transformed Chinese and Japanese warfare. Civilizations that adapted to cannons thrived. Those that resisted fell behind. Cannons introduced a brutal reality. Technological superiority mattered more than tradition. Over time, artillery became more sophisticated. Smoothbore cannons gave way to rifled barrels, increasing range and accuracy. Explosive shells replaced solid shot. Mobile field artillery allowed rapid deployment. By the 19th century, cannons had evolved into modern artillery capable of reshaping entire landscapes. The First World War demonstrated this power on an unprecedented scale. Artillery barrages destroyed cities, trenches, and armies alike. The battlefield became an industrial killing ground. Yet the roots of this devastation lay centuries earlier, when the first cannons shattered medieval walls. Cannons also changed how societies understood war. The romantic image of heroic knights faded. War became impersonal, mechanical, and devastating. Victory depended on factories, engineers, and supply chains as much as soldiers. This transformation reshaped politics, economics, and culture. States that mastered artillery gained dominance. Borders were redrawn. Old elites fell. New powers rose. Even today, the legacy of cannons remains. Modern artillery, missiles, and heavy weapons trace their origins to those early gunpowder experiments. The principle is the same: controlled explosive force shaping the battlefield. Cannons taught humanity a harsh lesson. Technology does not merely change how wars are fought, it changes who wins them. The invention of cannons ended the medieval world and created the modern one. They broke castles, destroyed feudalism, empowered states, and opened the path to global empires. Few weapons have ever altered history so completely. Cannons did not just change warfare, they changed the world.